And as students get ready to return to classes in the coming weeks, we are checking in with school districts across mid-Missouri on how return plans are going. This morning, we're joined by Columbia Public Schools Superintendent Dr. Peter Stiepelman. Thank you so much for being on with us this morning. First, there's been a lot of talk about delaying the start of the date for school this year. Can you explain a bit why that's under consideration for you guys?
A lot of districts actually all throughout the state of Missouri that have done that already are districts that we compare ourselves to. So Kansas City, the Clayton schools, the Rockwood schools, all these school districts are doing lots of different things when it comes to delay or even changing their models pretty significantly. And so for us, in talking with the city and talking with the city health department, and looking at the increased rates of cases in COVID that have been hitting Columbia, and in particular thinking about 30,000 students coming back to the university, there's some real concern about what Columbia is going to look like in a few weeks, and that it would make a lot of sense for us to pause our entry and wait until after Labor Day.
That makes sense. And then, is there a deadline that you will make that decision by of delaying school or making that start date permanent?
So a lot of families, obviously, to postpone our opening fundamentally changes their plans for the fall as well. So that has to happen very soon. I don't have the authority actually to open schools. I only have the authority to close them in an emergency. So the Board of Education meets on Monday night, and we'll be presenting to them a calendar that has a revised start date.
Understandable. And you also told us that you are considering a hybrid model of learning as well. Can you explain what that would look like for you?
I know that you have me a couple of times this hour, so it may be helpful to go into it a little bit further the next segment, but I will say that districts across the state want children back. We all want children back, and we have to do it safely. And so a hybrid model allows us to reduce our enrollment in terms of the number of children in a classroom in half. And so that allows us to then meet the requirements of the health department and then the recommendations of the CDC, the WHO, the American Association of Pediatrics, to have between 3 and 6 feet distance between students. We weren't able to achieve that with the model that we were trying to pursue. And that seemed okay in June when we had less than one case over a 5-day period. That was fine. Now we see 61 cases on this past Saturday. Things are changing, and then it requires us to take a mid-course correction and change it also. So we want kids back, we just have to do it in a safe way.
That makes sense. And so for that hybrid learning model, and as you said, we can talk about it another time in this show, but will it be different days of the week that students are in then?
Exactly. You'll have two groups, Group 1, Group 2. Group 1 would come on Monday and Tuesday. Group 2 would come Thursday, Friday. And then Wednesdays would be used for a number of different things like cleaning the building again before the next group comes, as well as trying to do things like interventions and social emotional learning, trying to be really strategic and thoughtful about some students who may need a little extra to come back on those Wednesdays.
And with that hybrid model, are you talking about that right now and making plans for that, or would that be later in the school year that would start?
Thanks. Yeah, so we want it to be one of our tools. Right now, our only two tools are we're open 5 days a week or online. And so the Board of Education will be presented with a third option for us to be able to use. And then we'll see what the data looks like as we get closer to Labor Day. To think that we're going to open 5 days full day, I think would be disingenuous. It wouldn't be fair to say to the public that we think that's going to happen. In looking at all of the districts we compare ourselves to, all of the districts that are like Columbia in so many ways, they have either moved to fully online. So if you go look at Kirkwood and Clayton and Parkway, they're going fully online. But then schools like Rockwood and others are doing, and Springfield, they're doing a hybrid because everybody agrees we want our children back. Families need their kids back in school. We just need to do it safely.
So in the last half hour, we mentioned that hybrid learning model the district is looking into. Can you explain what those in-person and online days would look like for students and teachers?
Yeah, we're actually working on that right now. As you know, as a school district, we're really proud and pleased to provide only two choices. One was come to school 5 days, and the other was if you're not comfortable, you may choose an online platform. And that was based on really good data in June. In fact, that was based on really good data in March and April and May and June. And then in July, we started to see a real shift in the cases here locally, and that has not gotten much better, although I will say that the mask ordinance has absolutely helped. And so the hybrid model is another tool that allows the district to still offer in-seat and in-person learning, but for only 50% of the students. And so that allows us to bring in students twice a week, once for the first 2 days of the week, and then a second group the other 2 days. And so what you can expect is that our students will be in seat learning with their teacher. And let's say you're in group one, so you come on Monday and Tuesday, and then on Thursday and Friday you would be, or Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday you would not necessarily, you wouldn't be at the school, but you would still have the opportunity to learn. What that's going to totally look like, it could be that we're working on where students can zoom into their classroom for a period of the lesson and then be released to go do that work. Because great instruction is not 45 minutes of standing in front of students and just talking to them. It's about a general lesson and then turning students off to go work independently with a teacher checking in and working with them. So we're working through that. It will look different, obviously, at elementary, middle school, and high school. And we will have even more details for our board on Monday night.
Understandable. And then I know it's early on in those plans, but would the same teacher be teaching both groups, and how would that work for that?
That's a really excellent question. And so we started working on this in March and then shelved it because the data didn't bear any need to continue working on it. You're talking about your teacher. So if you are there on Monday and Tuesday, you're in person with your teacher, and then Thursday and Friday, your teacher is still working with you. It will be different. So, but our expectations in terms of how does a teacher teach in person for 10 students in their classroom while the other 10 are online is definitely going to need a portrait of a student really well explained for everybody.
Understandable. And what resources will that district have to help families make that model work for them as well? I know for parents working during the week.
Yeah, that's another interesting and important question is, I'm a parent too. And so I'm trying to figure out what will my child care look like in terms of when my children are not in school. And so we're working through that. We've had some conversations with community groups to try to figure out if there's an opportunity to create pods, because some families who have already chosen just to be online are creating almost these pods where they are only with their circle, with their, lots of people are doing that with their own friendship groups, right? So they're doing it with student groups and having students work together on their online learning.
All right, and then we're playing video over this interview too of a lot of students walking around, and one of the questions we keep getting from viewers and also our own team is, how will social distancing look like in passing periods? Have you guys figured that out yet?
So our plan talks through, and really it depends on the building, because if you have Rockbridge High School has very wide hallways, Battle High School wide hallways. Hickman High School was built, over 100 years ago. It has fairly narrow hallways, and so it really is dependent on the building. And one of the things that principals are looking at is how to do just one direction hallways, how to have staggered passing times and things like that. So we'll have to be really flexible on when students arrive and leave classroom, just to make sure that we're not all congregating in one spot. But again, if you were to talk to the health department, they'll talk to you about, a contact is not defined as just being in a space close with somebody, right? If you're at the supermarket or at the mall, just being in close proximity for a brief moment is not considered a contact. It's when you are in a space for 15 minutes at a time within that below 6 feet for that long period of time. That is considered a contact. And so that gives me a little bit of encouragement that we can move kids as long as we're not congregating.
So first, the school board is considering a lot of different plans for this school year, including a hybrid form of learning with some days for in-person and some days online for students. What factors are you using to decide whether you'll do one of those three options, all in-person, hybrid, or all online?
Oh, thanks for the question. That's a really good one. So what we're doing is, I think everybody recognizes this incredibly difficult task that's ahead of every school superintendent, every school board, every school district across the nation. And one of the things that we're looking at is how can we have a concrete tool that we use to really determine what is the most appropriate model. And so to your question, we've looked at Harvard put out a model, the state of Georgia put out a model, and those are they're good, but they look at the number of positive cases over a 14-day period for populations of 100,000. And Columbia is smaller than that, obviously. The state of Missouri is smaller than that, and so 100,000 doesn't really make sense. It may make sense for Los Angeles or Boston, but not for Columbia. And so what we're looking at is using a model that came out of the state of Minnesota. It's a really clean model that looks at the number of positive cases over a 14-day period per 10,000 population. And so what that does is it puts things into categories for us. So for example, if you have 0 to 9 cases over a 14-day period, then that helps us understand that, you know what, you can be in person. And that's what it looked like for us in March and April and May and June. But then in July, we started to see it spiking to 22 or 23 cases per 10,000. So then that really says to us, oh, you got to be more in a hybrid model based on that tool. And then if you get above 50 cases, then it says, look, you've got COVID-19 really very present in your community, and so you should be on a virtual model. And so having a tool that, whether you agree with it or you don't agree with it, at least you know what the tool is, and so the decisions aren't arbitrary, but they're really planned and thoughtful. And so it's our thought, or at least my recommendation to the board, is that we use that tool, and then that we actually coordinate our announcements with when the city is coordinating their announcements, so that everybody knows on this day, you'll hear about the city reopening, you'll hear about the schools reopening, and just not having to